untold truth about boxing. It's raw, it's brutal, and it's unpredictable. One punch can turn an underdog into a superstar and a champion into a meme. But beyond the knockouts and title belts, boxing has a side that's even wilder than what happens in the ring. You think boxing is just about skill? Think again. Money, politics, mind games, and sometimes even crime play a role in who wins and who fades into obscurity. From Floyd Mayweather stacking millions to Jake Paul turning the sport upside down, boxing is no longer just about the best fighter. It's about the best story. Did you know that some of the biggest fights in history might have been rigged? Or that a champion once went from having hundreds of millions to being completely broke? And let's not forget the controversial rise of YouTube boxers, drawing more attention than some world champions. In this video, we'll uncover legendary fighters and their darkest moments, the biggest scandals that shook boxing, and the insane lifestyles of today's champions. So buckle up, because this isn't just history. This is the craziest side of boxing that promoters don't want you to know about. Let's get into it. Boxing didn't start in a glamorous arena with million-dollar contracts. It began as a raw, no-rules fight where survival mattered more than skill. Today, it's a billion-dollar industry where promoters, streaming services, and influencers play just as big a role as the fighters themselves. Back in ancient times, boxing was as savage as it gets. The Greeks introduced it to the Olympics in 688 BC, but their version had no weight classes or time limits. Fighters just punched until someone couldn't stand anymore. Fast forward to 17th century England, and bare-knuckle boxing became a betting man's favorite pastime. There were no gloves, no real rules, and definitely no referees calling for a fair fight. Everything changed in 1867 when the Marquess of Queensberry rules introduced gloves and rounds, making boxing more of a sport and less of a street brawl. But while the rules changed, the corruption stayed. Even in the early 1900s, fights were often rigged by the mafia, and many boxers never saw the money they were promised. By the mid-1900s, boxing had moved into its golden era. Fighters like Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and Sugar Ray Leonard made the sport mainstream. It wasn't just about who hit the hardest. It was about charisma, storytelling, and big-time rivalries. Ali didn't just fight in the ring. He fought for civil rights and changed the perception of athletes worldwide.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Muhammad Ali has just refused to be inducted into the United States Armed Forces.
But boxing's shift into big business really took off in the late 20th century. The rise of pay-per-view changed everything. Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, and later Floyd Mayweather made hundreds of millions as boxing became more about entertainment than just skill. The 1997 Tyson vs. Holyfield rematch, also known as the Bite Fight, sold 1.99 million pay-per-view buys, showing that controversy could sell as much as talent. Today, boxing is no longer just about championship belts. It's about views, clicks, and engagement. Traditional fighters like Canelo Alvarez and Tyson Fury dominate in skill, but influencers like Jake Paul and KSI have reshaped the game. Love them or hate them, these YouTube boxers have brought more eyes to the sport than some actual champions, proving that marketing is just as powerful as a knockout punch. Big streaming platforms like DAZN and ESPN Plus have replaced traditional cable, and now, boxing events come with Hollywood-style promotions. Fighters have turned into full-time brands, selling everything from tequila to NFTs. It's no longer just about winning a title. It's about who can make the biggest headline. Boxing has come a long way from back-alley brawls to million-dollar spectacles, and it's still evolving. The question is, what's next? Will influencer boxing completely take over? Or will the sport find a balance between skill and showmanship? Boxing is only as great as its fighters, and throughout history, certain names have transcended the sport. Some became global icons, others became cautionary tales, and a few completely redefined what it means to be a boxer. Whether it's the legends who built the sport or the new faces taking it in a different direction, these are the biggest game changers in boxing. Ali wasn't just a fighter, he was a revolution. He was fast, smart, and had a mouth that could sell out an arena before he even threw a punch. His battles with Joe Frazier, George Foreman, and Sonny Liston weren't just fights. They were cultural moments. Ali changed how boxers promoted themselves, blending skill with showmanship. He proved that being a fighter wasn't just about the ring, it was about influence, politics, and making history. No one has ever dominated boxing with pure fear like Mike Tyson. Exploding onto the scene in the late 1980s, Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion ever at just 20 years old. His knockout power was unreal, his aggression unmatched. But just as quickly as he rose, he fell. Prison time, financial ruin, and scandal nearly destroyed him. Despite his turbulent past, Tyson remains one of the most iconic figures in sports history and has now reinvented himself as a social media personality, podcaster, and cannabis entrepreneur. Love him or hate him, Floyd, money. Mayweather took boxing from a sport to a financial empire. With his undefeated 50-0 record, he turned fights into multi-million-dollar business deals, making more money in one night than most athletes make in a lifetime. His fight against Manny Pacquiao in 2015 became the highest-grossing PPV event of all time, and his exhibition against Conor McGregor in 2017 was just as much about showbiz as it was about boxing. Say what you will about his defensive style, but when it comes to making money, Mayweather is the blueprint. Canelo Alvarez, the pound-for-pound king. If there's one boxer today who still represents the old-school work ethic and dominance, it's Canelo Alvarez. Coming from humble beginnings in Mexico, Canelo climbed the ranks to become the undisputed super middleweight champion, taking on and defeating some of the best in the world. Unlike many modern fighters, he doesn't dodge tough opponents. He seeks them out. His fights sell out stadiums, and he's one of the last true warriors keeping traditional boxing alive. Like it or not, Jake Paul has changed the conversation in boxing. Coming from YouTube fame, Paul turned what many thought was a joke into a serious career. By knocking out former UFC fighters and even challenging legends, he's proven that in today's world, attention equals power. His fights generate massive paydays, and he's introduced a whole new audience to boxing, whether hardcore fans like it or not. Some call him a fraud, others call him a genius, but one thing's for sure, he's made boxing interesting again. Boxing is still evolving, with a new generation pushing the sport forward. Tyson Fury, known as the Gypsy King, revived the heavyweight division with his charisma and resilience, especially after his epic trilogy against Deontay Wilder. Meanwhile, Manny Pacquiao became the only 8-division world champion in history, solidifying his status as a global icon. Younger stars like Gervonta Davis are bringing knockout power and showmanship to the ring, making sure boxing stays explosive for years to come. These fighters, past and present, have shaped boxing in their own way, whether through their skills, their personalities, or their ability to draw massive crowds. The sport isn't just about winning fights. It's about creating moments, breaking records, and leaving behind a legacy that people will talk about for decades. Some fights are bigger than boxing itself. They define generations, break records, and shift the entire landscape of the sport. These are the battles that went beyond championships and prize money. They became cultural events, moments that people still talk about decades later. One of the most legendary fights of all time was Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier in 1971. dubbed the fight of the century, it wasn't just about two undefeated champions colliding. It was about pride, politics, and a global audience hanging on every punch. Ali, the anti-establishment icon, against Frazier, the blue-collar warrior. The fight lived up to the hype, with Frazier handing Ali his first ever defeat in a brutal 15-round war. It set the standard for what a true superfight should be. Fast forward to 1997, and boxing saw one of its most infamous moments. Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield, the second Tyson, once the most feared man in boxing, was desperate to reclaim his throne. Holyfield had beaten him in their first encounter, and the rematch was expected to be Tyson's redemption. Instead, it turned into chaos when Tyson bit off a piece of Holyfield's ear. The fight was stopped, and Tyson was disqualified, cementing one of the most shocking moments in sports history. When it comes to sheer financial impact, Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao in 2015 rewrote the record books. Years of build-up, trash talk, and negotiation finally led to the richest fight in boxing history, with over $600 million in revenue. While the fight itself was criticized for its lack of action, it proved that boxing, when marketed right, could still command the world's attention. In today's era, fights like Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder and Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin continue the legacy of legendary matchups. And let's not ignore the rise of celebrity fights. Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury may not have been for a world title, but it pulled in more mainstream attention than some championship fights. Then came Jake Paul's biggest spectacle yet, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. What was once thought to be impossible became reality when Paul, the YouTube star turned boxer, stepped into the ring with one of the most feared heavyweights of all time. The fight was a perfect mix of old-school power versus new-age marketing, and whether people saw it as a gimmick or a real fight, it became one of the most talked-about events in recent boxing history. Great fights aren't just about knockouts or belts. They're about storytelling, rivalry, and capturing the imagination of fans worldwide. Whether it's a grudge match, a comeback, or a fight that simply refuses to be forgotten, these moments prove why boxing remains one of the most electrifying sports on the planet. For decades, the idea of women stepping into a boxing ring was dismissed, ridiculed, and even banned in many countries. It was considered too dangerous, too brutal, too unladylike. The sport was a battlefield reserved for men, a place where aggression and power were seen as purely masculine traits. But against all odds, women fought their way in, punch by punch, round by round, until they were no longer ignored. Early female fighters had to prove they even belonged in the conversation. In the 1970s and 80s, pioneers like Christy Martin and Lucia Riker smashed through barriers, often fighting in small venues with little recognition. Martin, in particular, put women's boxing on the map with her bloodied, all-out wars in the ring, forcing promoters to take notice. But even then, women's fights were often treated as sideshows, placed on undercards for shock value rather than respect. Everything changed when Laila Ali, the daughter of the greatest boxer of all time, stepped into the ring. With her father's charisma and an undeniable talent of her own, she turned heads and brought mainstream attention to women's boxing. She was dominant, skilled, and impossible to ignore. But the real breakthrough came in 2012, when women's boxing was finally introduced to the Olympic Games. Suddenly, the sport had a global stage, and new superstars were born. Today, names like Claressa Shields, Katie Taylor, and Amanda Serrano are not just part of women's boxing, they are boxing. They sell out arenas, headline pay-per-view events, and demand the same respect as their male counterparts. Shields, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, calls herself the GWOAT, greatest woman of all time, and she has the skills to back it up. Taylor and Serrano's 2022 showdown at Madison Square Garden proved that women's boxing can deliver the same electricity, drama, and financial success as any men's fight. Women's boxing has gone from an underground struggle to a global sensation. It's no longer a question of whether female fighters belong in the ring. It's a question of who's going to dominate next. The sport has changed forever, and there's no turning back. Boxing isn't just about skill and athleticism, it's also one of the most scandal-ridden sports in history. Where there's money, power, and pride, there's also corruption, cheating, and shocking betrayals. The ring may be where fighters prove themselves, but outside of it, some of the sport's biggest names have been caught in webs of controversy that shook the boxing world to its core. One of the most infamous scandals in boxing history involved Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali in their 1965 rematch. Ali landed what appeared to be a light punch, sending Liston to the ground in what many still believe was a fixed fight. Rumors swirled that Liston, with deep ties to the mob, was forced to take a dive. Whether true or not, the knockout remains one of the most suspicious moments in boxing. Then, there's the legendary Mike Tyson, whose career was filled with both triumph and disaster. From his shocking conviction in 1992 that landed him in prison to his infamous ear-biting incident against Evander Holyfield in 1997, Tyson's life outside the ring was just as chaotic as his fights. His downfall was spectacular, losing his fortune and ending up bankrupt despite earning over $400 million in his career. Modern-day boxing has had its fair share of scandals as well. Canelo Alvarez, the pound-for-pound king, faced a major setback when he tested positive for the banned substance clenbuterol in 2018. While he claimed it was from contaminated meat in Mexico, the controversy nearly derailed his career. And who can forget Floyd Mayweather's legal troubles? Despite being the wealthiest boxer in history, his multiple domestic violence charges have cast a shadow over his legacy. The corruption in boxing isn't limited to fighters. It extends to the judges and promoters as well. Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley in 2012 remains one of the most controversial decisions in modern boxing. Despite Pacquiao seemingly dominating the fight, Bradley was given the victory in a split decision that had fans screaming, "Rigged!" The backlash was so intense that even casual fans questioned whether boxing was truly fair or if money and politics controlled the sport. And then there's the wild world of crossover boxing. Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury had the internet buzzing, but many accused the fight of being more entertainment than sport. When Jake Paul took on legends past their prime, like Anderson Silva, some purists called it a mockery of boxing, while others saw it as the evolution of fight promotion in the social media age. Boxing has always thrived on controversy. Whether it's doping scandals, rigged fights, or fighters losing it all outside the ring, the drama never stops. The sport has survived corruption, mob influence, and bad decisions, proving that no matter how many scandals come to light, fans will always tune in for the next big fight. Boxers might be warriors in the ring, but outside of it, they live in a world filled with luxury, drama, and some of the most stunning women on the planet. Their relationships, breakups, and romances make just as many headlines as their fights. From longtime power couples to whirlwind romances with models and influencers, these fighters prove that their personal lives are just as entertaining as their careers. One of the biggest names in boxing today, Jake Paul, isn't just shaking up the sport with his fights. His love life is just as explosive. After high-profile relationships with influencers and models, Jake is now dating Jutta Leerdam, an Olympic speed skater and social media sensation. The power couple dominates headlines, sharing their lavish vacations and intense training routines. With Paul's ability to stay in the spotlight, his relationship has only added fuel to his ever-growing empire. But Jake Paul isn't the only fighter with a love life worthy of a Hollywood script. Floyd Mayweather, the king of luxury, has been linked to numerous women over the years, from reality TV stars to Instagram models. His relationships are as flashy as his lifestyle, filled with private jets, diamond watches, and million-dollar shopping sprees. Yet, despite his playboy persona, Mayweather has managed to keep control over his personal brand, never letting drama overshadow his legacy. Canelo Alvarez, on the other hand, represents the more traditional side of boxing romance. The undisputed champion married his longtime partner, Fernanda Gomez, in a stunning ceremony that looked straight out of a fairy tale. Unlike many fighters who thrive on controversy, Canelo keeps his personal life private, focusing on his family and businesses outside the ring. His devotion to his wife and daughter adds a level of depth to the warrior persona he carries in the ring. Then, there's Mike Tyson, whose personal life has been just as turbulent as his boxing career. From a highly publicized and controversial marriage with actress Robin Givens to later finding stability with his wife Lakeisha Spicer, Tyson has lived through some of the wildest relationship stories in sports history. But perhaps his biggest personal tragedy was the heartbreaking loss of his 4-year-old daughter, Exodus Tyson, in 2009. The accident devastated him, sending him into one of the darkest periods of his life. It took years for Tyson to recover emotionally, and he has since transformed into a reflective, spiritual man, dedicating himself to his family and mental well-being. Of course, we can't talk about boxers and their relationships without mentioning the legends of the past. Muhammad Ali was not just a great fighter, he was also known for his high-profile marriages. His relationship with Veronica Portia Ali was particularly iconic, as she stood by his side during some of the most defining moments of his career. Their love story had its ups and downs, but it remains a memorable part of boxing history. Beyond the glitz and glamour, many fighters have struggled with personal demons that affected their relationships. Oscar de la Hoya, once the golden boy of boxing, saw his personal life unravel in the public eye, with scandals involving substance abuse and infidelity making headlines. Adrian Broner, another talented but troubled fighter, has been in and out of legal battles, with his personal issues often overshadowing his boxing career. Even legends like Sugar Ray Leonard have spoken openly about personal struggles, proving that fame and fortune don't guarantee happiness. The world of boxing isn't just about knockouts and championship belts. The personal lives of these fighters add another layer of intrigue, making them larger-than-life figures both inside and outside the ring. Whether it's high-profile breakups, stunning marriages, devastating losses, or controversial romances, one thing is clear: boxing's biggest stars know how to keep us watching, even when the gloves are off. Boxing isn't just about throwing punches. It's about stacking millions and living like royalty. The biggest names in the sport don't just train in elite gyms. They drive Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Rolls-Royces, own mega mansions, and wear limited edition Rolexes, Audemar's P-Gaze, and Richard Mille timepieces. The money made inside the ring is just the beginning. These fighters have built empires, turning championship belts into gold-plated lifestyles. No one embodies boxing luxury more than Floyd "Money" Mayweather. The undefeated legend isn't shy about flaunting his wealth. He owns a $25 million Beverly Hills mansion, a private jet, and a car collection worth over $40 million, featuring Bugattis, Ferraris, and rare Koenigsegg supercars. His Instagram showcases stacks of cash, diamond-studded watches, and shopping sprees worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. Mayweather doesn't just fight. He prints money. But Mayweather isn't the only one living like a king. Canelo Alvarez, one of the highest-paid boxers today, owns a stunning collection of real estate, including a massive ranch in Mexico where he breeds racehorses. His garage is packed with custom Lamborghinis, Porsches, and McLarens, and he's been spotted wearing million-dollar diamond-encrusted watches. Unlike Mayweather's flash, Canelo's style is refined. Less show-off, more billionaire businessman. And then there's Jake Paul, the internet sensation who turned boxing into an influencer empire. Jake went from YouTube to multi-million-dollar paydays, spending his fortune on exotic cars, luxury watches, and a Miami mansion that screams wealth. Whether it's flexing in a Rolls-Royce Cullinan or making headlines for his outrageous spending, Jake represents the new era of boxing wealth. Social media-driven, high-impact, and impossible to ignore. Luxury in boxing extends beyond just cars and houses. Fighters rock custom suits, designer shoes, and private jet trips to exotic destinations. They vacation in Dubai, Monaco, and the Maldives, staying in $10,000 a night penthouses, rubbing shoulders with Hollywood stars and business tycoons. The lifestyle of an elite boxer is about more than just winning. It's about looking like a winner all the time. But for every success story, there's a cautionary tale. Fighters like Mike Tyson went from owning tigers and million-dollar estates to bankruptcy. Evander Holyfield, who made hundreds of millions, lost it all due to bad investments and financial mismanagement. The line between boxing superstardom and financial disaster is razor thin, and only a few manage to stay on top forever. From supercars to skyscrapers, the top boxers of the world aren't just fighters. They're kings of a lifestyle that most can only dream of. But the question is, how long can they keep the money flowing before the final bell rings? Boxing is more than just a sport. It's a global phenomenon that has shaped the world of athletics, entertainment, and even business. From the streets of Philadelphia to the bright lights of Las Vegas, boxing has influenced everything from how sports are marketed to the way athletes train and perform under pressure. The impact of boxing is everywhere. The sport created some of the first true international superstars, fighters like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Floyd Mayweather, whose names are known even by those who have never watched a single fight. Ali, for example, wasn't just a champion. He was a symbol of resistance, social change, and the power of self-belief. Tyson turned pure aggression into an empire, and Mayweather proved that in the modern world, an undefeated record and smart marketing could generate billions. Beyond individual fighters, boxing revolutionized the fight business. The introduction of pay-per-view, mega-fight promotions, and crossover events has inspired other combat sports, especially MMA and UFC, which now follow similar business models. Without boxing paving the way, we wouldn't see the massive spectacle of fighters like Conor McGregor selling out arenas, or influencers like Jake Paul transforming YouTube fame into a legitimate fighting career. And let's not forget the evolution of sports science. Boxing training has influenced everything from high-intensity interval training, HIIT, to the rise of celebrity boxing workouts, now a fitness trend embraced by Hollywood stars and everyday gym-goers alike. The combination of discipline, endurance, and mental toughness that boxing requires has made it one of the most respected forms of athletic preparation in the world. Boxing has never just been about two fighters in a ring. It's about legacy, influence, and pushing the limits of human endurance. As long as people crave competition, drama, and the ultimate test of willpower, boxing will never fade. It will only continue to evolve. Boxing has stood the test of time, surviving controversies, evolving with new stars, and constantly redefining itself. But where does the sport go from here? With social media-driven fights, the rise of crossover stars, and technology changing the way fans experience combat sports, boxing is at a turning point. Traditional champions like Canelo Alvarez and Tyson Fury continue to hold the torch, But names like Jake Paul and KSI are rewriting the business side of the sport, bringing in a new generation of fans. Will boxing remain the purest form of combat, or will entertainment-driven matchups take over? One thing is certain: boxing will always be about legacy, power, and the pursuit of greatness. The only question is, who's next? If you loved this deep dive into the world of boxing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Who is the greatest boxer of all time?